Rev 21 Films, your host, Ralph Perez. I have right here, a picture that was digitally created based on the Shroud of Turin. For those of you who don't know what the Shroud of Turin is, it is the alleged burial cloth that Jesus Christ was buried in when they put him in the tomb. And over the centuries, this cloth found its way in the hands of quite a few people until it found its way eventually in its resting place in a church in Turin, Italy. Now, in the discovery of, not discovery, but in the development of photography, an amazing thing happened when a photographer back in the turn of the century took a picture of what was considered a faint image of what appeared to be a man that was buried in this Shroud of Turin. And you've seen pictures of it, I'm sure. You can just look it up, Shroud of Turin, and you see it pop all over the place. A negative. When he saw the negative of the film he took, of the photo of the shroud, he flipped. And it actually caught the whole world off guard because in the negative, you could tell that it was not just a buried man that was buried in this cloth, but a man who had been crucified, tortured, whipped, all the characteristics, even down to the crown of thorns, down all the characteristics to Jesus Christ, as it portrayed with his passion, his death, his crucifixion, what happened to him leading up to that moment. It was an amazing thing, right? So what happened was they found it inspirational. The church found it inspirational, and but the Catholic Church never. They're being cautious. They're saying, you know what, this may be the actual shroud that covered Jesus, or it may not be. We're not obligated as Catholics to believe it really is, but it's okay if you do, because if it gives you inspiration and gives you the affirmation that the resurrection of the Christ was an actual historical event as opposed to just a fable, like so many people out there these days like to say, oh, it didn't happen. Jesus didn't rise from the dead. They made that up. Right. Yeah. Okay. But this is one of the things that science itself has not been able to, um, disprove. Right? Here's something. In the 1980s, they used carbon 14 dating, the same chemical and scientific method that is used to date rocks, like fossils, how old a dinosaur bone is, or a fossil or a rock or whatever. That could be used also for recent history as well. They got permission to cut off edges of the fabric of the shroud. It's kind of like your jeans, like the way your jeans are threaded. The shroud has a similar threading, has a similar material. And what happened was they ended up taking samples of that and used it for carbon 14 dating. Okay, and it turned out that the dating was dated around the 1200s, which really was a big blow to the faith community, because what it was basically saying was that this isn't really the burial cloth of Christ. 1200s? No, because Jesus, that whole thing with Jesus, the events of all of that happened 2,000 years ago, not 800 years ago. So it was kind of like this, all right. But then things started coming up over the years. Certain scientists, certain people wanted to re-examine that, and certain things came up. One, the material, the edges, which have been handled constantly throughout the ages, because that's how you grab it. You grab it by the edges of a cloth, especially if you don't want to mess with the middle part. It has the imprint, the image of the person. It is possible for carbon 14 dating to be compromised and messed with if you're constantly handling the material. Okay? Can't do that with fossils because it took millions of years for the fossil to form. So by the time you get to it, it's already a done deal. But in the case of the Shroud of Turin, it was constantly handled, and it's not like the Knights Templar or whoever the heck was transporting this piece of cloth from country to country, from city to city in the early centuries. It's not like they were scientists. They didn't know any better, So they didn't have the material. They didn't have the scientific know-how on how to, do that. So they went back into the labs, and they couldn't. They couldn't get the middle parts. The church isn't letting them, because of the possibility of the integrity of the material being seriously compromised. They're still trying to see if they can do that. But while they're doing that, other evidence has come out. Incredible stuff. I'm going to try to lay it down to you as fast as I can because I could be here for hours talking about this stuff. One, they found paintings, sketches, and I don't have them here, but you know what? I'll put links below that will take you to actual photos and not photos, but drawings and paintings that were made well before the 1200s, like in the 800s, 700s, where they're showing people, it's a drawing or a sketch back then of how they used to paint and draw of people carrying the burial cloth of Christ. It was described as being that, and it had the same burnt markings on it because there was a fire at some point. I forgot what year before there was a fire, and it got burnt a little bit. You got which is another reason why the carbon-14 dating might have been compromised as well. There was a fire that compromised the cloth. They were able to rescue the cloth and keep it from getting all burnt up, but they were able to save it. But there's still burnt markings on the actual cloth. If you see a picture of the whole cloth in its entirety, you'll see where the burn marks are in the areas where they folded it. And they found those same exact accurate burnt marks on these sketches that were drawn before the 1200s, before the alleged time they said this was made. So that suggests an earlier date of the Shroud of Turin, because how can you just know that, right? That's one. Two, the cloth that was made on the edges was different from the cloth of the rest of the shroud that was more centered in on the body, as if they were trying to maintain it and keep it, like the fabric of the edges of the cloth. It's different from the fabric from the rest of it. It's been proven that it is a different kind of fabric. Same material, different origin. The fabric in the middle comes from, of all places, the Middle East. Okay, from Italy to the Middle East? How did that happen? So you have that evidence. Clue 3, they found traces of a pollen of a kind of flower on the Shroud of Turin that's very old, but it's traces of pollen that goes back. That is a flower that grows in the Middle East. Doesn't grow in Italy. It doesn't grow anywhere in the Middle East. So that's a third clue. Fourth clue. Okay, ready for this? The blood stains that are all dried up on the Shroud of Turin had been, because the man was crucified. You see the evidence of crucifixion on the wrists, which supports the idea that Jesus was crucified on the wrist. That was the normal form of crucifixion, not so much the hands. It wouldn't have been able to support the body up there. It would have ripped right through the wrist, because there's a bone there that helps hold the sad person, whoever was getting crucified at the time. Remember, crucifixion was a common form of capital punishment back then in the Roman days. So yeah, so there's that. I was going somewhere with this. Yes, I have to digress. The dried blood was AB. AB positive, I think. I could be off. I'm doing this video on the whim. I wish I had my materials in front of me, but I'll put links below of other videos of other people who really know what they're talking about with this stuff. But the AB blood matches the AB blood. It's the same blood type. Let me just say it like that. The blood type that's on the Shroud of Turin is the same blood type that has been on what has been, and this is another topic for another time, the Eucharistic miracles recorded throughout history, where scientists have examined these hosts that a priest had consecrated that literally turned into the real flesh and blood, like some kind of fleshy tissue and blood and stuff. And people are like, "Oh my God, what is this?" So they examined it, and and all of the Eucharistic miracles worldwide that has happened throughout history, that whenever they've been able to examine the blood type scientifically, it turns out to be the exact same blood type, and it's a rare blood type. Not everybody has that blood type. It's a very rare one, okay? And it just so happened, coincidentally, to match the same blood type that's on the Shroud of Turin. Clue number 4. All right, clue number 5. This is the most, to me, the greatest clue. The greatest clue, okay? How the hell did that shroud? How did that image get there? Huh? It's not ink. It's not. It wasn't made with ink. It wasn't made with other fabrics. It was. I mean, even if it was fabricated in the 1200s, it's not like they had the ability and the technology to create the kind of image that's on that shroud. That's one of the biggest mysteries about it. How did that image get there? And what they tried to do, they tried different experiments, not on the shroud directly, but they used similar materials to kind of replicate what would be called flashes, light flashes of extreme high radiation, where something like that could potentially be made on an image of so they took a mannequin or some kind of a sculpture of a person that looked just like that, put the shroud on them, put not the shroud, but a fabric just like it on them, and then they did this high potency flash of light to see if it can create a visual imprint of the person, of the statue underneath, or mannequin or whatever they use. They use some kind of a figure, and it didn't come close. Didn't come close to the image on the shroud. What happened to the shroud remains a mystery, but what it is commonly concluded by those who believe in the authenticity of the shroud is that that image was made at the moment of resurrection, at the moment that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, that there must have been such a blinding flash of radiation and light, scientifically speaking, that couldn't come close to maybe a 50 megaton hydrogen bomb. All right, like that serious, that would create that kind of an imprint, not only on that shroud 2,000 years ago, right, when it was supposedly made, but that it was able to just stay that way on that shroud for 2,000 years to this day. This shroud is so, I personally, if you would ask me if this is the real burial cloth of Christ, I would say yes. I will say yes, because, and it's not because I'm blindly believing it, or because the church said so, or because so-and-so on the internet said so. Because of the research done by the scientific community of this shroud, okay, that some guy was even able to make a 3D image of the face of what Jesus might have actually looked like in real life. If this was, in fact, Jesus Christ, they took the face on the shroud and did 3D imaging and created this image right here that you're looking at. And I'm like, holy God, that looks just like Jesus. Like some people think that Jesus was a white man from Europe. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, like the paintings say, or Jesus was a black man from Africa and all that. Both are wrong. Jesus was a man of Middle Eastern descent. He was a Palestinian Jew living in first century Palestine. And aside from the skin tone, I would have made this, personally, I would have made the skin tone darker. Okay, darker. But the facial features and all that definitely suggest a Middle Eastern man. And, you know, I think it looks great. If I hope if I really want to go to heaven one day, but if I go to heaven and God, please, I really do. I need help. Confession time. Go to heaven. And I meet Jesus. If he looks even close to this, I'm gonna be like, wow, they were right. And Jesus was like, I know, right? They did good. That would be great. That would be a great, wonderful thing. What an affirmation to those who believe that Jesus Christ did in fact rise from the dead. I mean, there's so many witnesses. People died believing in that. Most of the apostles died. Would you die for a lie? Would you die for a lie? If this was not true, if Jesus did not rise from the dead, okay, then that means all of the apostles suffered and died for nothing, all of his 12, okay? Over the exception of John, who still was persecuted and was tried to get killed, but he ended up spending some exile on Patmos. That's where he wrote the book of Revelation. And then there's St. Paul, who wrote that if Jesus Christ had not been risen from the dead, then we have to be the most pitied of all. I forgot which epistle he wrote that in, which letter, but it's there. I'll put the reading below. I got a lot of stuff to write down below. Brothers and sisters, this is an amazing find, the Shroud of Turin. This painting here is an amazing painting. Hold up. Let me there. Wanted to get rid of that red framing. This is an amazing it's one of the great mysteries of our faith. The best part is the whole how the image got there. All right, there's no scientific explanation that explains how that image got there. It looks like a negative or something photogenic, something in the realm of physics and light that pales everything else that we've ever examined as in the scientific community. All right, I mean, I like to see Neil deGrasse Tyson challenge that. Like, yeah, how did that image get there? I would ask any scientist. Forget Neil. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think he's an awesome freaking scientist. Are you kidding me? No offense to him. I watch Cosmos. I love it. You'd be putting that. There's such a beautiful harmony between religion and science, and I resent the idea that the two can be so opposed to each other when in fact they are actually harmonious. And good topic for another time. Love science. So, yeah, let me know what you think. All right, this is Jesus the Christ, and let's see, if this turns out to be a beautiful, maybe one day they'll be able to confirm the actual date of the shroud. Using the more older fabric that is more inside, that not around the burnt areas, but around the areas that are not burnt, areas that have been less touched and more preserved. All right, it may not still work out because this cloth has been handled so much throughout the centuries that probably not going to find it that way. But that painting I was telling you about offers a clue that it's much older than the 1200s that the carbon-14 dating suggests, and other accounts written even far beyond that show that. I'm gonna again post links to other YouTube videos below so you can check, so you can research, so you can learn. It's great when we have knowledge on our end to light our way, to learn vital truths, not only of our faith, but in the world that we live in. This is a wonderful example of how science and faith interact and interject and harmoniously work together in both of their common goal, which is to find the truth. It's Ralph Perez from Rev 21 Films, my Catholic channel. Please consider subscribing. It's a young channel. I've had it for a few years already, but I need to give it more attention. I've been too busy with other stuff. But yeah, until next time, God bless you.